Hey there. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about the habits and processes that you need to develop around your studio painting practice. Remember, this lesson focuses on just those good, strong habits around your studio, and that there are four essential ingredients to forming that habit loop that we've been talking about: cues, routines, rewards, and reflection. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about creative mindset or we're talking about painting, you still form habits the exact same way. Let's dive in and talk about the three basic studio habits that I want y'all to take a look at and make sure that you are doing. You're probably already doing these to a certain extent, but you want to firm up those habits that you've already got and maybe expand them just a little bit. So remember the five pillars, and that we have that thriving creative mindset in the center, and it feeds everything else. And then right there at the top, create compelling artwork. Creating compelling artwork is fundamental to having a thriving artist practice. You can't have a thriving artist practice without art. So, in order to create that art, you need to create a habit around making art. There's this myth out there that us artists wait around for inspiration to pop us on the head, and then we go make fantastic painting. That's actually the opposite of the way that the process really works. Inspiration shows up through action taken. So, being in the studio on a regular basis actually helps feed and create inspiration. So, these habits that we're going to talk about are the ones that will help you still make forward progress, even when you're not feeling all totally inspired, because we all go through that at one time or another. Let's talk about what some of those things are. They are the three main big habits are establishing a regular studio practice. We're going to talk about exactly what I mean about that, but it's showing up on a consistent basis. If you don't show up regularly, it's going to be really hard to create the consistent body of work. It's going to be really hard to develop a niche. You got to show up. Remember, I said inspiration shows up through action taken. Showing up on a regular, consistent basis is how that happens. The second big habit is defining your niche and reviewing it on a regular basis. Why is that important? And especially in light of my saying in the past, I still say this: do not paint to the market. So I want you to understand that saying define your niche does not mean paint to the market. You need to make paintings in a niche that you are passionate about, that also has people in it that are so passionate about it that they will purchase your art. So it's the synergy of those two things together that creates the niche. Define and know your niche. Really important. Does it mean you can't ever do anything else? Not at all. Don't misunderstand that. It means that this is the niche that you're going to market and you're going to present right now. Doesn't mean you can't ever do anything else. It doesn't mean that you're not going to experiment. Hopefully you will. But it means that you're going to focus in on a body of work, on a category, so that you can develop momentum in that category. Because the truth is, people look for consistency in artists. They don't go searching for artists who are trying everything out. If you're going to market yourself as an artist who tries everything out, you're going to have to take an entirely different approach. Absolutely can be done, but it means that you have to market yourself as a work in progress yourself, and you're inviting people along on that journey. It's much more difficult to do that. So define that niche, know what it is, know that you can experiment. You're just not necessarily going to be showing that yet, and you're not necessarily going to be marketing that. Third thing is that you're going to create a consistent body of work. Doesn't mean you have to have 35 paintings, all in the same style, in the same medium, of the same subject, and the same size. That's not what I mean. I mean that there has to be a distinctive consistency to what you're presenting to the public, that it needs to flow one out of the other, that there should be some sort of overriding style that pulls it all together, whether you're using different mediums or you're exploring different subjects. The more you can focus, the greater momentum you will gain, and actually the better you'll get at creating paintings in the niche that you've chosen. So the first two things help to create that third thing. That compelling, consistent body of work is what gallerists are looking for, curators are looking for, designers are looking for, and collectors are looking for. So we're going to talk about more details about how you can do all three of those things. So in looking at creating a regular studio practice, number one is to actually do something towards your practice every day, even if it's tiny, even if it's small. And I have a couple of suggestions below. But doing something towards your practice every day will help keep your creative juices flowing. It's a good idea to set a regular schedule and put it on the calendar, because what gets calendared actually will happen. Block it out and make that sacred time in the studio one of your top priorities. It truly is more important than folding laundry. I promise. Don't get distracted by folding laundry. So many of us do. Put the studio time in there first, then build the laundry time around that, not the other way around. Studio time comes first. What that studio time is and how much it is, that's up to you. It may be, if you're still working a 9 to 5 job, that your studio time during the week is simply making a quick sketch every day in your sketchbook, or journaling every day for a brief time, either in the morning or the evening. It may be that you only paint on the weekends. But I promise you, if you do something during the week, whether it's journaling or working in your sketchbook, that time that you spend on the weekend actually moving paint around will be so much more productive. So put it on the calendar, schedule a regular time. Understand it doesn't have to be 4 or 5 hours. I used to think that too. You can accomplish a great deal in just an hour and a half to 2 hours of actually physically moving paint around. But get it on the calendar. Showing up for small blocks of time is way better than occasionally arriving for those longer big blocks of time. Keep a sketchbook. I firmly believe in sketchbooks for one reason, if for nothing else. It is a place to make a mark on a daily basis that you put down without judgment. And that, my friends, will further your practice more than almost anything else. It could be simply making a doodle, making a single mark, doing a thumbnail, practicing note hands, jotting down ideas. Your sketchbook can be your journal. It can be all kinds of things. But get one started and do something in it, please, 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 every day. Then you may be asking yourself, why does she have try daily journaling in there? Here's why. A lot of times ideas flow out of other ideas. And all those things that you do to feed your creativity, they lead directly into the studio. If you're journaling as part of your creative practice, it will become part of your studio practice. There's no separation there. And you'll get a lot of your best painting ideas from keeping that journal going. It's also a great place to put ideas at the end of the day. Again, it doesn't matter if you're mixing that in with your sketchbook, but it's a practice that really will help you move further faster. Number 2, next big habit, define your niche. Define and know that niche. It will help you immensely as you begin to market your work, especially begin to market and sell your work. but it also helps you dive deeper into creating that consistent body of work. It helps you get ideas of other artists that you might want to collaborate with, other artists whose work you might want to explore further yourself to help with that inspiration factor. Knowing your niche is super important. It's a good idea to review it annually, put that on your annual list, because your work can change over time quite organically. And if you don't review that niche on a fairly regular basis, you can suddenly find that the niche that you've defined that you're telling people you're doing over time switches and changes. And the words may not match the art. We've all been there. So remember, the niche is just a category. There are two niches. There's your product niche. That means your artwork niche, your artwork category. And then there is your collector category, your client category. And knowing what you do and how you're going to categorize it helps to find those ideal collectors, as does really beginning to nail down those core values that we talked about during the challenge, which will help you build your content later as well. So all of this is organically interlocking. And once you begin to build on it, it creates a really strong foundation for your online art biz. Nothing is created in isolation. So that's why the niche is so valuable. And one of the reasons I have it in here in the studio practice and not over there in just the business practice, because it really does belong here in the studio. It is so directly connected just to the paintings or to the artwork that you're making in your studio practice. Then the third habit that I want you to think about, if you're not already doing it, is to work on creating a consistent body of work that you're passionate about and that your niche will be thrilled and passionate about as well, that they'll find irresistible. If you understand your niche really well, it becomes so much easier to create work that's going to speak to them because you share those values, those 4 to 5 values that we've talked about. So first thing, focus on your niche. That helps to create the consistent body of work. Second thing, follow your curiosity. Because one of the things that gets in the way of creating a consistent body of work is overanalysis, which creates the paralysis of analysis. You can't figure this all out. You need to allow your curiosity to play into creating that consistent body of work, or it'll become mechanical. Your gut knows what it needs to explore. So if you're painting still lives, for example, and you start getting really curious about the trees that those lemons grow on, and you really would like to see what a pear tree looks like, for example, follow that curiosity. It may mean that you're about to make a shift into becoming a landscape painter. It may not, but you got to follow those threads in order to develop your body of work in a consistent way and an organic way. Think in terms of projects. Here's what I mean by that. When you think in terms of projects, it means that you're thinking a little more long-term rather than just the next painting on the easel. It means that you're kind of going in a direction following a theme or an idea. If you can frame it as a project, it makes it a little less precious and, ironically, a little easier to talk about. You can say, for example, I'm working on a series of landscapes around the Savannah Wildlife Refuge. That's a big category, but it still actually narrows down my niche tremendously. And it aligns with my ideal collectors. And it becomes a project. It's something I can focus on for a while. I can research and explore that subject in depth. I can collect materials on it that help inspire me. I can follow my curiosity about what in the world those rice fields used to do. What did they used to look like? How do they look now? What's the difference? It all feeds what you're doing with your paintings. And it keeps you excited about getting back to the easel. If this project doesn't work, it's just one project. You start another project. It also makes it much easier to organize things like small collections of artwork that you're going to launch and sell. It makes it easier to apply for grant and foundation money in order to fund those projects. So, working in projects is a very beneficial way to make yourself available for a whole variety of funding options that actually go beyond just an online art business. So, think about working in terms of projects. Think about setting a quarterly focus so that you have a kind of project focus for each quarter. Can you repeat a quarter? Heck yes, you can. You can put it aside for now and come back to it later. You can change the project focus mid-quarter, but setting those parameters, setting a framework for yourself in the studio actually makes you a whole lot freer. Having a square box in which to bounce all around in makes you a much freer artist. So think about creating a project for yourself that has a time frame roughly of a quarter. It makes it so much easier to set timelines, to set funding lines, and to think about what kind of social media content and website content you might develop. So those four things underneath the compelling artwork, again, underneath the consistent body of work rather, are focus on your niche, follow your curiosity, which means that might want to go in your journal or your sketchbook. You start getting curious about something, write it down. You will not remember it. Write it down. Think in terms of projects. Get an idea for a project in the middle of another one, write it down, put it in your sketchbook or your journal, and set a quarterly focus. When you work that way, you'll find yourself getting way more done, again, in even small blocks of time. So, those three focuses again, those three habits are, let's quickly review those: establish a regular studio practice, define your niche, and create a consistent body of artwork. Once again, I've got a list for you in this workbook for this lesson. And after you've evaluated and assessed what you're already doing in the studio, I want you to look at that, check some that you may not be doing, that you may want to add to what you're already doing, and put it on a tracker. There's one attached to the end of this workbook. We're developing trackers for each one of those areas that we're going to be particularly working on. Then share some of those into the Facebook group. We build ideas off of each other, and having that interaction in there will give you both accountability and spur some other ideas on as well. Feel free to keep adding to it. Remember, we're not competing with each other, we're collaborating with each other. Happy painting, everyone. Look forward to seeing you in lesson 5.